this is my third State of the College address. It has been a very busy summer. We've been hiring a number of staff. We've been gearing up for some new CPS Strong programming. We have been hiring our typical 200 adjunct instructors. We've been learning Canvas, and we've been adjusting the schedule for last-minute faculty replacements. We have been admitting, orienting, and enrolling our largest first-year class ever for the third year in a row in defiance of Ohio demographics. So congratulations on that. That does not happen by accident. So it does not happen by accident. And so I want to ask the admissions team to stand and give a hand to the admissions team for all their wonderful work. I would ask the One Stop team to stand so we could acknowledge their important role in admitting these students, but they're working hard. They don't have time to sit around at a convocation. But when you see them, please high-five them for all that they're doing to register these students. I would like us to acknowledge our advising staff. I think a few of them are here. Advisors, please stand. I would like to acknowledge our student life team for orienting students so well with a beautifully redesigned orientation this year that's gotten a lot of positive feedback. Oh, but Sarah. And then I'd also like to acknowledge the department chairs. Please stand, department chairs. I know that you've been working tirelessly to adjust those schedules and meet the needs of our students. Our college would not be successful without all of you. So on a more personal note, this summer has also had some poignant moments. I am bracing myself for an empty nest as my son Jake moves into the dorm tomorrow. Yeah. I have also been to visit my former mentor and graduate school PhD advisor. I went to visit her 2 weeks ago down in Lexington, Kentucky. This is my advisor, Dr. Monica Harris-Kern. Monica is 57. She was diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer this spring. And since then, she has learned it has spread to her lungs. She is now in hospice care, and she has just a few weeks to live. She has been really honest with me about her reflections and her lessons spent from a life in academia. I've been thinking about her a lot lately, and as we look into this academic year, I'd like to frame my comments and encouragement for you as a tribute to Monica. So some of you might be kind of crushed that I'm not including my normal psych studies in my talk. Don't worry, I have something for you. Okay. So the first thing that I learned from Monica is that expectations matter. She spent much of her early career in social psychology studying self-fulfilling prophecies. Ironically, in one of many medical appointments this summer, her doctor implored her to think positive in the face of her grim diagnosis. He told her, "Your attitude matters." And he literally said to her, "Have you ever heard of a self-fulfilling prophecy?" In fact, Monica had 43 peer-reviewed articles and 2 books on that very topic. So the self-fulfilling prophecy is the idea that others' beliefs about us affect how they treat us, and that affects our own beliefs, which we internalize, and thus our own actions. Those expectations matter. Monica studied with Robert Rosenthal at Harvard, whose 1963 study with Kermit Fode had 2 groups of college students who were supposed to test rats running through a maze. The rats were labeled maze bright rats, and another group of rats was labeled maze dull rats. Okay? So they were running through this T-maze. All of the students had the same instructions for running the mat through the maze, timing them, and recording the correct answer. Miraculously, the rats labeled maze bright chose the correct wing of the T-maze more often than rats labeled maze dull. The conclusion of this study obviously is that rats can read. Just kidding. The conclusion is that the college students unintentionally created the conditions and the results that aligned with their expectations. Now, this finding doesn't just apply to rats, it applies to people as well. Another famous study in the 1960s by Robert Rosenthal and Jacobson gave 18 teachers in elementary schools an expectation about their students. They were told that 20% of the students in their class, based on a standardized test, were ready to bloom. In fact, those student names were picked at random. When those students were tested at the end of the academic year, the students who had that positive expectancy, that ready to bloom label, outperformed students who weren't labeled in that positive way. The teachers created what they expected out of those students. There have been a number of criticisms about this famous small sample size study, but many subsequent, more controlled studies have showed the same thing, that teachers' expectations matter. So Monica conducted a meta-analysis of studies examining self-fulfilling prophecies to look at the ways that teachers communicated their expectations about students in a way that made students live out those expectations. And here's a list of ways that teachers made it happen. Praise, frequent interactions, asking students questions, giving longer wait time. Thank you, Ruth Benander, for always teaching me to count to 10 in my head before I move on. Creating a positive climate, accepting students' ideas, and giving more eye contact. These are not really that difficult, and they are all about warmth and connection with our students. So I know that you wouldn't be teaching at an open access school if you weren't an optimist, and if you didn't have faith that every student can change and learn based on what you do in the classroom. So I will encourage you this year to please try your hardest to treat all of our students like they are ready to bloom. So my next lesson from Monica is that expectations matter and high standards matter. Even though she studied how these warm factors affected students, she was no softie. She was notorious for failing graduate students from their quals or thesis defenses, thankfully not me. She ran the IRB with an iron fist, making researchers resubmit protocols dozens of times. And her red pen struck the hearts of many of her students with great fear, including me. Her graded drafts looked like an episode of Dexter. After the first paper she graded of mine that I got back, I cried and questioned whether graduate school was for me. So at the time, her high standards were terrifying, but I came to appreciate those high standards and realized that she also offered the support that I needed in order to reach them. She also helped me realize that high standards can live in conjunction with flexibility, with kindness, and with support. In our own educational psychology classes, students learn about the zone of proximal development, where learning is both challenging, but yet not quite overwhelming, where students can be successful if they have the appropriate supports. If the level of challenge is above that zone, students are anxious and they shut down and they panic. If the level of challenge is below the zone, students are bored. They check out and they're on their phones. It takes a real art to create assignments in classrooms that live within the zone when you have a variety of different abilities in your classroom. And that's what keeps things interesting to be a teacher and a staff member here at the college. We can all be proud of the fact that we have kept our standards high for our students. And that's one of the reasons why they go on to be so successful when they transition downtown or when they move into their careers. Another lesson that I learned from Monica is that empathy matters. Even though Monica was a productivity machine, she always took time to get to know people and even animals, like a probably rabid squirrel on campus, and an unreasonable number of stray cats that she took in. Many of her former students hold Monica in fondness because she was always interested in what was going on in our lives. She always asked about our kids, our jobs, our challenges, our marriages, our hobbies, and funny stories. Now, this is probably because she liked to gossip, but her curiosity also extended from her personal relationships into her educational activities. Even though she was a scientist and a statistician, Monica understood the value of the humanities because they enriched her life, especially music and literature. She made the connection that we're seeing in the headlines now, that humanities education increases empathy. One recent study showed that medical students with stronger humanities backgrounds as undergraduates showed more empathy in clinical settings later on in graduate school. Jean Twenge found that empathy is declining among college students over the last few decades. So I want to encourage us to both model empathy on a personal level in our interactions with students, but also encourage them to study humanities in our curricular and co-curricular offerings to build their sense of empathy. Another lesson from Monica is that connections matter. Your biggest accomplishments will not be reflected in your bank account or your vita. The connections you make matter the most. Studies of patients in hospice repeatedly find this, and this is Monica's experience as well. In the last month, one of her colleagues compiled a book of reflections from 20 of her former students. This book means so much to Monica. She keeps it on a table by her couch. She shows it to every guest who comes by and has highlighted certain sections of the letters. By the way, I just want to point out that she doesn't always just pull out her published articles to show her guests. She has always been genuinely curious about people, and even when she disagreed heartily with others, she has been kind and maintained her relationships and separated her disagreement from a desire to know what made people tick and extend them kindness. You are in academia because you love learning, and I encourage you this year to let your love of learning extend to curiosity about your coworkers and your students this year. It's easy to keep students at an arm's length because sometimes they really do misconstrue our concern for their success as an invitation to overshare or just to hang out all the time. That's not the norm, though, and if that happens, you can handle it. I trust that at that point, you, as an effective adult professional, can set the appropriate caring and professional boundaries that you need. We over-worry about inviting in the occasional needy student, and oftentimes we avoid making the effort to give students just a little bit of needed attention that might make all the difference for them. You chose to work at a teaching institution because you like relating to students, and I hope that you're able to make this a priority for this year. My last lesson that I'm taking from Monica and my visits with her this summer is that now matters. Looking toward the end of her short life, Monica's message is really hitting me to appreciate the time that we have. I'd like you to look around the room now at the faces here with you. And as you do that, if you've been here for any length of time, I bet you will hit on 10 faces in the next 10 seconds whom you deeply appreciate and love. Keep in mind, this is the last time you will be sitting in this room with this exact same group of colleagues. I encourage you to appreciate the little moments this year. I also want to encourage you to recognize that the time to be boldly Bearcat and take bold steps is now. There is no waiting for conditions to be perfect, for our budget to be better, for us to be less busy. You work in higher ed. That never happens. So try that experimental classroom activity. Pitch a project to a fun colleague. Invite a group of students on a field trip. And recognize it has never been more important to influence 5,000 voters in Ohio And in addition to seeing the urgency of teaching empathy, integrity, and the value of science, I want to encourage you to embrace the fun and the joy and the innovation as you look for ways to make an impact this year. So as a college, we are undertaking a number of initiatives to be more impactful for our students this year. Our admin team has touched on some of them. And next week, I will be sending out by email a report of our progress on our 2017 to 2022 strategic strategic direction. And so I'm just going to hit on a few of the topics that come up where you're going to see an update. Our CPS Strong programming with the addition of our 3 success coaches, our social worker position, a new admissions recruiter, and food pantry enhancements are just a start. We're making progress on the Bearcat Promise. Our advising team is implementing several aspects of that. Sarah Wolf talked about our inclusion efforts with our PATH speaker series and expanding our affinity groups events. Our academic units are working on new programs and enhancements. A notable one is taking our bachelor's degree in applied administration online and working closely with Cincinnati Online to expand our enrollment nationwide. We have some additional priorities. Tracy mentioned that it's important that every class has an accessible syllabus. Offering an accessible education is part of the mission statement of our college. We should be able to do this. Increasing scholarship funding through the Blue Ash Dash, and I hope all of you participate on September 21st. Efforts toward holistic student support led by Greg Metz. Improved student major selection, helping students find their major earlier. Looking for ways to smooth the transition to the uptown colleges. And finally, expanded veterans recruiting. There are other things keeping us busy this year. We have an internal audit going on. We're moving to a more centralized budget model. You know about Canvas already, and phase 3 of the month's renovation. We have a lot of activities to keep us busy. So in conclusion, we have a lot of work and a lot of opportunities to be innovative and inclusive and impactful. And as we go into the busyness and sometimes frenzy of our work, my wish for you is to savor the connections and the opportunity that you have to do work that matters. Thank you.